This crime scene is four different places, four different victims. It'd be very hard for one person to go from place to place to place to kill all these people. And it appears that it's likely not only he might have had some assistance actually killing the people, but also in planning the deaths of all these people.
Hey guys, NTM here with just an incredible story in the worst way possible. A 17-year-old allegedly commits quadruple murder with the help of his mom.
At this point, ready to release that information because there is a lot of investigative work that is still going on, and any release of information could be detrimental to the case. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Garza, Chief of Police for the City of Reedley, and I thank you all for being here this afternoon to get an update on our investigation, homicide investigation that occurred on Saturday, January 6th. So just to kind of give you a quick recap of what occurred is on January 6th, about 9 o'clock in the morning, officers from the Reedley Police Department were dispatched to a residence in the 1100 block of South Church for what was being initially reported as a burglary that had occurred. In that investigation and search of the residence, they did locate two people that were deceased. These two people were located in the backyard of the residence, and we requested the assistance of the Fresno County Sheriff's Department's Crime Scene Lab as well to come out and to assist in this investigation. As we were processing the scene for any evidence, we located a third body that was there on the property.
All right, so a quadruple murder rocks a small town in Northern California where the victim's next-door neighbor commits the gruesome crimes that so far don't have a motive at all. What's more is the suspect is only 17 years old, like I mentioned. And police say that his mother and her boyfriend helped. Now, it happened in Reedley, California, which is just 30 minutes southeast of Fresno. On January the 6th, investigators were dispatched to a home for reports of a burglary. Inside, they found an empty gun safe that they believe pistols and rifles had been taken from. They also found three bodies. 81-year-old Billy Bonds and his girlfriend-in-law, Guadalupe Kiki Bonds, were found inside. The bodies of Billy's son, 61-year-old Daryl Bonds, was found in a shallow grave out back. At the time, investigators said that 43-year-old Matthew Bonds was missing and at risk. Matthew was the husband of Guadalupe and son of Daryl and grandson of Billy. Matthew's body was recovered days later on January the 9th. He was found in a detached garage at the suspect's home just next door to his. That suspect is a 17-year-old boy whose name is not being released publicly. Investigators say that he had a prior relationship with Matthew Bonds, but we're still unclear on what that relationship is. The 17-year-old was charged with their murders, but police say he didn't act alone. His mother, 34-year-old Bryn Curtis, and her boyfriend, 21-year-old Rafael Gonzalez, were both charged as accessories after the fact. Now, according to a retired FBI agent, Colin Schmidt, it would be unlikely that the 7-year-old acted alone.
Basically, this crime scene is four different places, four different victims. It'd be very hard for one person to go from place to place to place to kill all these people. And it appears that it's likely not only he might have had some assistance actually killing the people, but also in planning the deaths of all these people, because there's quite a bit of logistics, so to speak, having to go from three different crime scenes and it's not as easy as people think to kill somebody. There's quite a bit of emotional energy that goes into actually having to do something like this.
Okay, so he's the only person charged with the murders of the four people right now. So how did this 17-year-old go up against four grown adults?
Well, we can speculate, as far as his objection or his motive as well as his ability. Not knowing exactly who the 17-year-old is, it comes down to basically, okay, how big is he? How strong is he? How motivated he was? Was he on a methamphetamine or cocaine or some drug that would make him even more have more adrenaline to kind of get through each killing? As well as the fact where the victims, were they in a state where they were kind of impaired, so to speak? Were they intoxicated? Were they sleeping? Were they on some sort of drugs themselves, which limited their ability to defend themselves?
As of now, investigators have released a few details about what led up to the murders of the crimes in general.
Well, I think that the situation is completely out of control, so to speak, and obviously the state of the crime scene is going to be indicative of the motive. Basically, if it's going to demonstrate the how much emotion this person had when he was in there, and if they're saying that the crime scene is extremely grisly, sounded like this guy or whoever did this went in there with a purpose, was very angry or very intoxicated, so to speak, and went in there with a purpose of, frankly, killing everybody.
For the adults charged as accessories, Smith hypothesizes they weren't originally part of the plan, but pitched in like after the victims had already been killed.
Likely he came home and he was probably just full of blood. You know, he was covered with blood because of the grisly nature of these murders, and they have a duty to actually notify the authorities. And versus what they probably did, which was helped him clean up and helped him hide the fact that he did this. So that would be the first step of this, and the second step would be they actually assisted him in some way of burying one of the victims, or actually the planning of actually going out and killing all these people.
If we're taking a closer look at the crime scenes, there were two people that were found in the home, and then out back there was another victim that was found in a shallow grave. I kind of wanted to focus on that part. Like, why do you think the 7-year-old or potentially the other people decided to partially bury this person and leave the other two people in the house?
Well, I think it comes down to the timeline. It might have been, it depends on who was killed first and who was killed second, third, and fourth. So the person that was the shallow grave, that might have been the first victim. And he decided he wanted to hide that victim. And then as he moved on to the next victims, he figured that it wasn't even worth his time to go ahead and try to create a shallow grave. The second point is, did the mother and the boyfriend come in after the fact and try to cover up the crime scene by covering up that victim with dirt?
How important do you think the orders of the murders were? Like you mentioned that who was killed first, second, third, fourth. Is something like that the investigators will be looking for?
Absolutely. The timeline in a violent crime is everything. And we've talked about this before. They're going to look at the phones. They're going to look at his behavior. They're going to look at all the people around him. They're going to look at his Facebook postings. They're going to look at his computer. They're going to do all this. But the timeline is everything, because that demonstrates not only motive, but also the probably the target of his anger would be indicative of that timeline. He's most likely going to go after the person he wanted to kill, that he's the most angry at first, and then kill all the witnesses, so to speak, after that.
So prosecutors noted that they hope to charge the 17-year-old as an adult and have reportedly even filed paperwork to move the process forward.
This level of violence and callous nature and frankly psychopathic behavior, he absolutely needs to be charged as an adult. In California, I mean, they have the death penalty. It hasn't been enforced in many, many years. I'm sure that would be part of the plea negotiations to pull that off the table, so he ends up taking a plea to all of this this violence and carnage. But definitely he needs to be charged as an adult. He needs to be carved out of society so he never harms another person.
You mentioned psychopathic behavior, and I mean, when I'm thinking of any murder, you have to be somewhat sort of out of your mind to commit this type of back-to-back murders, 4 in total. Is it possible that he suffered a mental break?
Well, I mean, just by definition of murder, you are suffering a mental break, because people aren't wired to kill. There's many studies of soldiers that come back with PTSD and all these other issues because they've had to do what they've done because they weren't, wired mentally to be killing machines. And the ones that don't come back, there's always a question on whether, okay, do they have a psychopathic tendency? So this kid was this callous and this without any empathy at all for his victims. It's apparent that he does have psychopathic tendencies, and he's somebody who's got to be taken out of society and parked somewhere so he no longer harms anybody else.
So it's possible more charges could still be coming in this case. If we're looking at charges for the mother and the boyfriend right now, or just charged as accessories, is it possible that those charges could be bumped up?
Absolutely. That if they're shown they had any knowledge of his intent to do this beforehand, they would charge them with conspiracy or accessory to a murder. where they end up going to look at a life in prison as well as he is.
Action News reporter Cassandra Gutierrez has been in the neighborhood where police have been investigating all day. She brings us the details on the search warrant served in 3 cities now and what we've learned about one of the victims.
Just miss them all so much, and just devastated. It's just terrible that any family has to go through this, let alone my family.
Cheryl Mosley is heartbroken over the twisted events in this quiet Reedley neighborhood this week. Her uncle, 81-year-old Billy Bonds, was found dead in this backyard on Saturday morning, along with 44-year-old Lupe Bonds. Skyview 30 video shows the active scene on Tuesday as police served a search warrant at the home next door, where a 4th body was found in a detached garage.
We are treating this as a separate homicide until we can determine whether it's connected or not to the ongoing investigation that we have at this point.
Police also served search warrants at a home in Parlier and at this home in Selma, where 2 vehicles were impounded. 3 people at this Reedley home were taken in for questioning: a woman in her 30s, a man in his 20s, and a teenage boy.
This is a very quiet neighborhood. Quite honestly, I used to live on this street years ago. It's just heart-wrenching that something like this is happening. There's a lot of questions that are still left unanswered.
Family members showed us this backyard of the original crime scene earlier this week. They pointed out a hole that had recently been dug, along with a tarp next to it. Possible signs of a shallow grave where the first 3 victims were going to be buried. Before police were called to the property for reports of a burglary, the community and victims' families still trying to make sense of this tragedy.
I just wish I had my family back. I miss them so much. They're great people, and they're totally going to be missed. Very, very much. It's just awful that they go like this. It's not fair.
Investigators have also impounded multiple vehicles connected to the case and asked for anyone with more information to come forward. Right now, both Gonzalez and Curtis are out on bond, but are due back in court next month. And a 17-year-old boy is being held in juvenile facility. All right, guys, this has been MTM. Once we get more information on this, we will continue to cover it.